things and new ways to do things, and we're sort of all living through a first time going through this. As we said at the county the other day, things will continue to change, and we will continue to change with the times as they go forward. We appreciate your understanding and willingness to allow us to conduct an outdoor event today. We'll go ahead and get started where we are. We have a number of things happening. Most of these are related, obviously, to COVID-19. The City of Pensacola continues to stay in daily contact with health officials in the Florida Department of Health for Escambia County, Escambia County Emergency Management, and local hospitals in regard to public health concerns related to the coronavirus COVID-19. In fact, there will be we'd like to remind everyone that this is a fluid situation. It's changing hour by hour, and we will work to be proactive where possible, but we will need to respond, and things could change. So where things start off one time a day a certain way, it very well could change before we get to the end of the day. We will continue to try to keep you updated, both the press. I think you know what's going on at the JIC, and trying to keep you informed as to what's happening. But again, as things move during the day, anything can happen. At this time, there's not any active COVID-19 cases in Escambia County, and we do not have community spread. Community spread is important. Obviously, if we get to that point, it will change what we end up doing. But at this point, we do not see community spread. So the things we're implementing, the way we go about day to day in Escambia County at this point is because of that. If things change, we will change, and we will probably institute new policies. We encourage everyone to continue to follow the recommendations from the Florida Department of Health and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Make sure that you're getting your information from reliable sources. In other words, either the CDC or the Florida Department of Health. There is certainly a lot of misinformation going around. We need to be sure that the information we are providing is the correct information. Toward that end, Commissioner May will be having a press conference Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. at Brownsville Community Center, and I will be participating with him, talking about many of the things he's been communicating with hospitals and providers on. He and I have been in constant communication through the weekend, and we are concerned both about what COVID-19 means, as well as where do we position and how do we best position the community to emerge out of this after this is over. So again, all of those things are things we're working on. Part of that will be that press conference, and I hope you will be able to join him on Wednesday, 10:30 at the Brownsville Community Center. City-specific items. The city has increased its frequency at which public facilities are cleaned. Public access at City Hall has been limited to the automated front doors you probably saw here on the east side of the building. Those can open without you having to touch. We're trying to limit as much personal contact as we can. City departments have continuity of operations plans in place to ensure essential services will be maintained if the city's workforce is impacted. Based on the guidance from state, Pensacola Fire Department, and the Pensacola Police Department, we have temporarily stopped fire station and police station tours in an effort to protect first responders and maintain critical public safety infrastructure. Home smoke alarm installations are still available for city residents by calling the fire department at 436-5200, but that could change if we hit community spread. Pensacola Police Department Citizens Academy has been postponed and will be rescheduled at a regular date. The City Pensacola Citizens Academy has also been postponed. Parks and Recreation is closing all programming at city facilities until further notice, with the exception of the spring break camps for this week only. We will continue those spring break camps as long as we are not told to implement a different policy. We expect to continue those through the end of this week. But all other programming in city parks will be ending, except for community centers. We'll continue to do senior meals, which we're working to provide on a pickup basis. We also may look in the future to work with the school board and the county if there's a plan. One of the things Commissioner May and I discussed was dealing with school children who would normally be getting free lunch in schools, and how we continue that program for them in a pickup sort of way, and we offer the school board the opportunity to use kitchens in community centers if they need to. But we do not want to lose that programming, same way we do not want seniors to lose food programming. Certainly food and keeping up proper nourishment is essential to your immune system in fighting COVID. So we will continue to look to do those things. But city community centers, as far as programming, will be closed to the public. Any reservations, permitted events, or rentals of city facilities over 50 people are being canceled until further notice. The city and county are talking with the school district, and that was what I told you earlier. We also plan to ask Governor DeSantis about assistance for small businesses that are impacted by this. I think we will be looking to write a letter to both the state and the federal government, just asking them in regards to what we can do. Similar to when we had the BP, if you remember, I can't remember the name of where everybody had to send in their information, then they could get payment back again. We need some type of program like that for dealing with individuals, to be sure that expenses can be paid for wages, as long as those small businesses and things are not removing people from payroll. We obviously want people to be able to continue, even though there'll be this period of slowdown. We want them to be able to keep their job as best they can. Certainly, we don't control that, but we plan to be asking both the state of Florida, as well as the federal government, to find some assistance in providing to that. We also have the Pensacola International Airport continues to monitor coronavirus and stay in regular contact with state and local partners to ensure a coordinated approach for any necessary response. At this time, the airport is open and fully operational. Travelers who are not feeling well are encouraged to stay home and to reschedule their travel plans. Some airlines are waiving cancellation fees due to public health concerns in regard to COVID-19. Please check with your airline to confirm that if your operation of your flight allows for this option. The airport has increased the frequency at which public touch points are cleaned, such as elevator buttons, escalator handrails, chair armrests, countertops, and other high traffic public areas. Hand sanitizer stations are also available throughout the terminal for public use. The airport USO Center is closed until further notice. United is canceling Chicago flight for the month of April. And pub patrol activity is in the terminal will cease until further notice. While dogs do not carry the coronavirus, it can end up on their fur and end up being a touch point. So we've suspended that activity. Just for you at home, remember they don't necessarily carry the disease, but certainly it could be on their fur. Cancellations that are happening. The American Magic Send-Off that was originally scheduled for today is going to be canceled. Census Kickoff, which was originally scheduled for Wednesday at 5:30, will be canceled. City permitted event cancellations: Battle of the Badges, March 22nd, Blues on the Bay, March 29th, Ciclavia, March 28th, Galuna Youth Dualathon is March 29th, East Hill Neighborhood Association Fish Fry, March 21st, Gallery Night, March 20th, Gulf Coast Science Festival, March 27th through 29th, Halifax Market Saturdays through the end of March, Pensacola Veg Fest, March 28th, Smoking in the Square, March 20th through 22nd, and Walk the Talk for Epilepsy, May 2nd, have all been canceled. Utilities. Pensacola Energy does not do utility shutoffs during the winter months, so we already have something in place. We're already working with federal programs that are in place to provide assistance as needed for paying utility bills. We also plan to ask if there's any type of stimulus from the federal government that they think about making payment to municipal services for individuals. This limits what individuals have to pay in their expenses, but it also makes sure that there's funding sources that are continuing so that we can continue to provide those municipal services as we move forward. So again, these are some of the things that are happening at this particular time. The biggest thing again is what you can do. I think that's perhaps, we saw that this weekend. We saw some of Andrew's commentary about things that were run off the shelf and other things that didn't. I think this is a part of the psychology of what we're working with. This is probably not going to be an immediate thing that we're out of. It's going to take some time, so we need people to think productively about what they're doing and how they're doing it. I think one of the things that are critical in this, when I met with Health and Human Services in Washington last week, I asked them, what are things I can tell citizens to do? One is, it's incredibly important, is getting enough sleep. You've got to live right, you've got to be able to get enough sleep. You need to find a way to get exercise. Please understand that while our park programming is closed, our parks will be open. If you wish to go walk around there, we certainly encourage you to participate as you can and get exercise within our parks, realizing that you need to maintain safe distances between people. But exercise is incredibly important. Living right is incredibly important. Eating right is incredibly important. That's why you've seen, even though we're reducing programming, we're still finding ways to provide senior meals and children meals, because those are essential for nutrients, which is important for your immune system in fighting this. I encourage everyone out there to be looking at their vitamins and minerals and making sure they're eating correctly what they do with their meals. So that's vitally important. And then lastly, I certainly think if you feel so inclined, and again, you feel like you've got to do something, there are opportunities for us to serve our fellow neighbors. I would ask you to think about who your neighbor is. And certainly if you have elderly neighbors that can't get out and don't want to be exposed, if there are opportunities for you to help them with their shopping, if you any way you can assist. We are great in this community about working with people during hurricanes. And while this is not, I don't pretend that this is a hurricane or anything else, but this is a natural sort of disaster that now is the time for us to be good people and show the kind of compassion that we can show as Northwest Floridians. So I ask that you please find ways, if you can, to work with your neighbors, check on them, make sure they're okay, and if there are ways that you can help them in obtaining goods and services, certainly that is needed as well. We need to all check on each other and continue to work with each other as we pull through this. So these are all things that I think are important. And the other part is we're going to get through this. There is, this is a challenging disease, and there's no doubt that for some people with immune systems it can be fatal to. But the vast majority of people in all these locations are coming out through this. We will come through this. So the most important thing is for us not to panic. Last situation again is we are not in community spread at this particular time. We have no plan to close or tell restaurants to cancel. However, if we reach a certain impact, I would tell restaurants to begin to think how they can either provide food for delivery or takeout. In the event that something does happen with community spread, again, anything can change, and we will change with the circumstances as to what we are doing. But at this particular time, we have no plan to do that at this point. But things could change, and I would ask all of our restaurants to think about that as how they move forward, and all our other small businesses. I would say at the city, we are working diligently to figure out how to use essential staff and then platoon other staff to give people breaks as we go through. I would ask our small businesses to think the same way. I think it's vitally important that we continue to try to stay open as much as we can, certainly in the sense of what it means economically, but also what it means psychologically for all those that are going through this. And I think that lastly, we just got to be cognizant of our own health. Over the weekend, we talked about radical transparency, and I think that's also required upon from each of us. If you are sick, if you have a fever, if you do not feel well, then we need the transparency from you not to show up. We really need you to do that in a sense of helping all of us. And find ways to work with friends and neighbors to help you get the things you need, and I totally understand that. But we don't need this to spread as little as possible. So we need you to think about that. We also, as we continue to work as employers and everything else, how do we continue to manage this, but continue to provide work opportunities, but also manage this in a sound way. So that's the advice I would give at this particular time to all of our small businesses out there. Lastly, there is something else that you can do that was also big when I went to Washington last week. You probably got your letter last week from the Census Bureau. We need you to fill out your census. That's something you can do between now and April 1st that we desperately need you to do. It's very important, our ability to get federal funding to position ourselves is dependent upon you filling out that census report. So again, if you are at home or something for some reason, and you, obviously the community centers are closed, other things are happening, you don't have something to do, I would please ask you to find an opportunity to get on your computer, find a way to get access, or there's also a phone line that is available from the Census Department, and contact that and fill out your census work. That is something that you can do that is productive for all of us here as well, in continuing to process those census returns. I hope you will do that. And lastly, I would say if you feel so inclined, as I said with Janice, I think what she said certainly there, I think we have a strong faith-based community in Northwest Florida, and if you certainly feel inclined to do so, pray for those, pray for certainly those who are in our position trying to figure out the right thing to do for our community, but certainly pray for our community and the safety of what it is. And so I think that is critically important for us. There are things that you can do, and we want to find ways to channel everyone into productive activities rather than unproductive activities and panicking and hoarding and setting things back. That's not what we want to be focused on. We want to be focused as a community. How do we make things better? How do we look out for our neighbors? And how do we certainly pray for our community? So that's where we are. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. If I don't have the answer, I may have to refer you to the Wednesday meeting. But again, I will answer the questions as I have answers for them.
Of course,
I'll get you course next.
So your guidance on 50-person gatherings, obviously that's a number that starts to hit on. You mentioned restaurants, places of worship. Are you weddings that may be planning, things like that? The official guidance for city events is closed over 50, but other events you're not recommending. This, I assume, is in line with the CDC.
At this point, we are looking to move community events to that space. We're asking individuals to think, but we are not a community spread. If we get to a community spread situation, we may very well have to institute those policies, Andrew, but at this particular time, that's not where we are.
And you didn't want to wait till that point for the down to 50 for public events?
We are already doing that for public events. I already said that in my press conference that we are down to 50 individuals, that all of our stuff will be, our permits will be closed, anything over 50. Of course.
So we've seen in some cities like Los Angeles and New York where the mayors are calling for the closure of restaurants and bars, or in some cases making restaurants takeout only. You mentioned you're not making that call right now. Do you think that is a bad call to make at this point? For you as mayor, how do you weigh the need to protect the restaurants and address precautions for the fire?
I don't believe we are anywhere close to community spread that those communities are already at. Both Los Angeles and New York are far along community spread where we are. If we hit community spread, we very well will be instituting that. But it's hard to ask somebody to do nothing when we're not at that impact. So again, at this particular time, we are not there. Things could change. It's the same way we told you last week. As events change, we will change with them. We have to be fluid, and I very much said in my press conference today, I think if you have a restaurant or something else that you begin to think about how you could transition, you really need to think about that. But at this particular time, we're not asking for that because we're not at community spread. The way our system works with, and I think we saw some of that last week, we are very dependent upon emergency operations. We have a protocol. We have a path. We have a coup plan for an operations plan for every disaster based on us hitting certain thresholds. We have not hit thresholds that those other communities have. Therefore, we are where they were before they hit those thresholds. If we hit those thresholds, we will be making those same calls.
Have you been assured that adequate testing is being done locally? Have you gotten any
Again, we are just beginning that process, but we don't have any individuals in hospitalizations or anything else that are happening at this particular time that have led us to believe that we are to that point.
Yeah, you were at the county meeting the other day, I think, and what was your read on Dr. Lanza's comments about the test, about there not being any test, that it was just a matter of a cotton swab or something?
Well, again, I think...
Do you expect those, do you expect cases to appear once they do start testing? I think they're starting today.
I think clearly we will probably see some cases. Again, I continue to say, looking at everything that I've seen, whether it was China, Italy, wherever else, you still have the vast majority of people who often get it but are not unsymptomatic. So again, are there people in our community that probably have that condition? I probably think we do probably have somebody in this community that does that. And while we don't have that information, it's likely to think that. But at the same time, at this particular time, the testing will be going forward, but we don't have anybody in critical positions in hospitals. I think that would lead us to believe, to know that we have some kind of a problem, that we don't know what's going around us, and we haven't gotten to that stage at this particular time. Again, other communities, both within the United States and the state of Florida, are already there. We are not there. That doesn't say we won't get there, but we are positioning ourselves with certain thresholds. When we hit those thresholds, we will institute new policies. We ask you to follow with us, and we will change as those policies happen. But I think the better part is to continue to be in a situation where we are making those decisions as we hit those thresholds. And my understanding is we've started testing with Sacred Heart is moving forward with that and their mobile site. And I think that Commissioner May plans to announce some other things with testing that he talked about. He's been working on Wednesday, and I would again advise you to be at that meeting on Wednesday, and I think there'll be more information at that time. Very good, Jim.
I just wanted to ask you if you could kind of clarify. You're saying you believe there could be cases spreading around, but we don't have the testing. The testing's been slow to ramp up here. Why not make a preemptive decision to, like other cities are doing? Why wait on the test?
It's not necessarily what the tests are saying. I think it's getting to a threshold point which we find ourselves having community spread. At this particular time, we don't have that, and we are moving forward with when we hit those certain levels. Yes.
Isn't the point of prevention to try and avoid getting to that level of cases around? Wouldn't it be best to do it before it's here already?
Well, again, I think if that was the case, why you didn't do it 3 months ago? I mean, everything within this sets to certain parameters what ended up happening. I think we're trying to advise and be best about what we're happening, because the other issue that happens is how you work your way through this process. Listen, I think you got to be out there and you got to be honest with everything that's going to happen. If you are trying to prevent something from coming and you are already taking measure and you begin to eat into your seed corn before it gets there, when it actually does get to you, you're going to have problems. So I think through this process, there's an important part. We got to think about where we come out of this at the other end, and what do we have. Every community that we've seen going through this, where they hit a certain point, and it's at that point where certain measures are happening. We're taking every measure we can within what we see, what is happening with our community right now. We simply ask that we continue to be calm as we go through this process, and we will position ourselves as we go through. And again, this is not a everything I see continues to say. And when I was up with HHS last week, this is not a case of something that ends up, it's one of those things. Its ability to stay around or resurface next fall. I mean, those are all kind of things that we want to prevent and work through. And the whole idea is to flatten the curve, and that's what we're trying to do through this process. The vast majority of people won't even still know that they have it, but there's no doubt that there are individuals that will be impacted by this, and we're trying to make sure we flatten the curve to make sure that as a community we move through that curve in a progression that makes it workable for both the system as well as our community as we emerge out of this. So I think the best thing to do is to continue to look at what CDC people are saying, what's happening out there, and how we manage the process where we go from here.
Any thought about libraries? I know you don't run that system, but I'm sure you guys have been thinking about that, especially with kids out of school.
My understanding, the libraries were kind of going to be making the same, and I was looking at Brian. I thought when we met this morning, you had said something about libraries. I don't know.
The county manages the library systems. We don't anymore. So
I do know you said you were talking with Michael Rhodes about y'all were going to be in lockstep for community centers, so I do know that. And I didn't know if that played over the libraries at all, but at this particular time, you're going to have to talk to the county on libraries and where that ends up going.
Similar question, canceling the community programs with the kids out of school, that's the one place they would flock to for something to do, especially for parents hard hit by the closures. how do you balance that interest of giving them a place to go while keeping the community spread low, risk low?
Well, I mean, again, Andrew, that's the challenge in this, is trying to be responsible about how we do all this. I mean, one time we're being questioned why we don't immediately shut everything down, and then you got people you got to worry about. We're worried about all those things. We're very worried about that. I think that's where we are. The City of Pensacola is trying to think about where everybody is and what everybody's dealing with at this particular time. We did say we were going to continue through the camp through this week, so we have not closed those things at this point. If we hit a community spread, it is very likely that we could close this week, but if we don't, we will continue to have those camps through the rest of the week. These are the issues that I was talking about, and of course made this question. I mean, this is why we cannot. We have to tailor our response to the conditions we are seeing, and I think that's what we have to do. And we continue to realize there's a lot of things out there that are moving parts. We don't want to drop the ball with anybody. That's serving our seniors, serving our children, serving our citizens. So again, the City of Pensacola is very focused on the whole well-rounded picture of everything. We're not simply looking at it from one angle. We're looking at it from everything, and we will continue to do so. Some of the questions, some of the things, some of the decisions that we make, you may think a certain way, and if you look at it from a single perspective, it is going to seem maybe that way, but we are looking at it from a 360 position as far as all of our citizens and what we're trying to do to provide them those opportunities. We've made it very clear that nutrition and food is essential, and we're going to continue to find ways to position to make food and nutrition essential for those who don't have anything. So I think as we keep working, that's what we're going to do.
Your business partner, ST Engineering, is based in Singapore. Have you seen any impacts to the project here?
No, but I would say one thing I have seen almost everywhere. That's interesting you mentioned that, of course, because the most interesting thing to me is almost everything I've read has said how well Singapore's handled it. Let me tell you the one thing Singapore did not do. Singapore did not do the Chinese model of shutting everything down. They didn't. What they were very practical about is they did have thermometers at every place you went in. You could not walk in somewhere and not get your temperature taken. Now, you can say, well, it doesn't mean you're not contagious if you're not having a fever. And it's possible they've seen their cases go up. They were I think when I left, they were 75. I think they're now at 278 on an island of 5.3 million. So, from that standpoint, they've seen it go up. But by no means have they seen it go to a peak, and they didn't shut everything down. So I don't know that this entire shutdown thing is the only way to do. I think there are a number of different ways that we can handle it, and we've got to be cognizant of all of our citizens' needs throughout this process. And so I don't think there are any easy answers. There are a series of things that we're trying to work through, and it continues to be very fluid. The one thing I will say that has impressed me very much about your city is you look around here and you see a lot of your department heads. They all came in today. We met this morning in a very calm way. No one is panicked on anything, and everyone is looking at what they can do and to continue to achieve both the results that we have to serve our community so that we're protecting our community, but at the same time being cognizant about what's going on with what the CDC says and what's happening with the disease. So I think in that regard, I've been incredibly impressed by the staff and what they've done and the commitment they've shown to this, and I want people to know that the City of Pensacola is out there to take care of them, and we're going to keep working through this process.
Have you made any moves to encourage people to work from home if they can? We're
doing that both internally and obviously talking corporately what we can. We have a few individuals who have returned from their spring break from going to places, and we have put them on administrative leave because they either were on a cruise or went to a foreign country, not more the Caribbean and those sort of areas, but we still are cognizant of any time you travel. So our position has been to figure out ways that they can work from home. We would say the same thing needs to happen to those private businesses, but we also want to be we're very cognizant about what this means to individuals. The last thing we want to do is really get to a point where we see people who didn't need to be hurt in an economic situation that really can only are sustained by the job they have to end up losing those benefits, losing that pay. That's not what we want to see either. That's one of the reasons why you're going to see us, I think, write a letter to both the state and the federal. That's on my list of things to do this morning when we get done here, to do that, to try to figure out ways that we can find economic ways to help people continue to earn the living they've earned, even though they may not be able to do directly what there is. There's going to be a slowdown in productivity, no doubt, but we need to find a way to make sure that everyone is covered during this period, and that we can work to make that happen. And we believe that one of the things that could be happening is much of the way paying municipal services fees for those things. That is very vital, that whether we control both sanitation and gas, but there are other people, there are power, there are other people with water and sewer, and obviously those services all need to continue as well. And the only way they do that is by a system that continues, everybody pays. So we obviously want that, and we want to be able to find a way to move forward. But I think from this particular circumstance, that's where we are, and we're continuing to monitor that and work through it. But we've had a policy on there where we don't disconnect people in the winter, and we're continuing to move within our policy.
What, if anything, can you try and do to help people with their landlords paying rent, that sort of thing, as some people may find themselves out of work for an extended period of time?
We're going to continue to be advocates for those people, that they end up continuing to get the wages they should through productivity, so that they can afford to continue to make their payments. That's one of the hardest things there. Like I said, we had this, we experienced this, we went through this with BP. I see this very similar to the format that we had before. People ought to be able to come in, small businesses, show their expenses and where their revenues were last year, show what they've experienced, and then find a way to get paid to make sure they cover it. But I think it should only be eligible to those businesses that don't lay anybody off. I mean, if you're laying people off, I think you make yourself ineligible for those claims. I mean, the whole idea is to keep people with their job and keep them intact so they can continue to keep working forward. I do want to say one thing. I think over time you're going to continue to see us talk with food suppliers in any way we can to make sure that we have the things we need, that the essentials that our citizens need are there. And so, I think as we go forward, we continue to work through that. So those are all things that we're very cognizant of and continue to work through.
So far, who do you feel has been hit hardest by this in Pensacola?
I think at this point we haven't seen as much from a medical side. That's not to say that we won't. So if the question is who's seen the most, I certainly think it's potentially those citizens that end out losing out economically. But obviously that could change if we begin to have community spread and we have people that are actually seeing physical impact in going to the hospital. I mean, then it's going to change over to those that are actually in the hospital. So this is a fluid situation. We've said that many times. It'll continue to change. But whether it's the individual that goes to the hospital or whether it's the individual that's dealing with economic challenges, the City of Pensacola is working within their resources to try to address both items as best we can.
What's the current plan, if any, for city council meetings or other board meetings?
At this particular time, we're continuing to look to have the city council meeting next week. Obviously, things could change, but at this particular time, we plan on still having the council meeting.
Same as normal, crowd, public forum, all that?
At this point, it's a public event. We would have to figure out how to do that. I would say we had a meeting last week, and I don't think there was a problem with community spacing. We managed to still hold it. We still have, at this point, we have the meeting. We're looking if there's a way we can do things online and take the challenge is how do you queue people up that want to say something. So these are things we're looking at. Susan has been talking with these things. So again, your staff is on these things from a contingency planning standpoint. We're looking at everything, but at the same time, you can't stop. The city's got to keep working. Our commitment here today, as we talked about, is while certain things in the city may close and may not be working, the city's not closing. We are not closing. We are here. We have citizens to take care of, and regardless of the dangers that we find ourselves working at, our communities in those same dangers. So we're going to keep working, and that's the thing I'm most proud of is the people you got working behind you back here. They're here showing up, and they're here to get the work done. They're here to board for the citizens.
Can you clarify on the senior feeding programs? Have y'all transitioned to pick up meals, or
We are in the process, Brian. I guess are we still having? We're in the process of transitioning to pick up. I think right now we're still working with Council on Aging to provide at the centers this week. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we are still in a point of doing the feeding at the centers.
Today for sure.
But if we hit a community spread standpoint, we'll be moving to that, and so we're already we're trying to transition to that point.
Today for sure at the centers. Tomorrow we have an election at 2 facilities or 3 facilities, so we probably won't feeding big tomorrow, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday we'll try to have a pickup.
Thank you for bringing that up, Brian. I forgot to say something. I meant to say that I was a little late coming down here because I got a call from David Stafford. The election is still on tomorrow, so if you can vote today, you can still go by his office and pick up a ballot and vote there. If you don't want to go be in the area with it, those centers, there is going to be an election tomorrow. It is going forward. We are working at least at all those places that have polling places. That was one of the things David asked about, if we could have additional cleaning during the day just to hit some of those touch points, much like they're doing at the airport. I was going to reach out to you getting off that phone call. I told him we would make a commitment to trying to hit do some additional cleaning during the day. But the election is going to go forward tomorrow at this particular time. So I did talk with David Stafford. Again, we have a number of city assets that are used, and we are going to work with him as much as we can to make that as open as available as it can be, and work through that. And then we've made a commitment to clean those centers after they leave, and make sure we're vigilant about cleaning it, and then opening it back up for the one senior center at Bayview if we have any feeding. Again, at this particular time, we are still continuing those feedings at the center, but after the election, if something else changes, we're very fluid, and we're trying to look at moving to a takeout delivery kind of situation. Yes?
I just want to clarify as far as the council meetings. You said they're not changing anyway. They're still going to be held inside the same way that they have been.
At this point, that's where we are, of course. Anything could change, but at this point, that's where we are. We are still planning to move forward with our next one is next Thursday. If something changes, if a variety of things happen with our community, we could be changing the way we've done it.
Do you feel typically during those meetings, there would be more people in there than there are out here right now?
It depends on the topic. Certainly we had one last week where I think we got more people out here than we had at the council meeting. It's just, but again, I think the challenges we'll have to address as that moves forward, and take a look at it. I will say we've been looking at, do we do something online where the council members are here and we look for the public to respond and do it via some type of online internet service. The challenge there has been figuring out how do we get people queued in, how the responses and the questions come in, and allowing for people to communicate and talk in a way that not everybody talks at once. So that's been our challenge, but we absolutely have been looking at it. So these are things we've been evaluating over the last couple of weeks, but at this particular time, we are not at that point where we got to make that decision.
But you got us outside right now, these chairs spaced out, some hand sanitizer over there. Is this just a show for the cameras?
Well, we felt that this was the right thing to do for community spacing. I do believe perhaps the Purell on my desktop is more for appearance, but it's to remind you that we want to be doing that. I'm at this particular time, I'm comfortable with where we are, but I think we want to be cognizant of the message we are sending, and we are trying to send about proper spacing. And I think your city has been very diligent about the message we've been sending. Thank you very much. Again, I hope you all will be with us on Wednesday at 10:30 at Brownsville Community Center.